Good afternoon. Welcome. You have made it all week long. And in our environment, that can be quite the accomplishment. As I see folks are still kind of coming on, I want to show you what I have created for us and what I have given you the link to. If you do not know about Wakelet, W-A-K-E-L-E-T, Wakelet, this is a free educational platform that you want to know about. I have laughed and said in many places, I went around all summer going, where have you been all my life? Writing my dissertation would have been so much easier. And those of us who, I should say, organizing for writing my dissertation would have been so much easier. Wakelet it's what I call Pinterest for nerds on steroids. So you can put a Google extension in so that you can save whatever. So you can be on a website, you can be at a YouTube, and you can just click the extension and it'll save to the collections. So what I've done is created a collection for our workshop. And in this collection, you will see the video that I used on the first day, the PowerPoint that I used for the first day. GNTV has already given us day one, so you can see it in English and you can see it in Spanish. Here's the liturgy from the Presbyterian Women's Bible Study that we used yesterday. Here's the PowerPoint from yesterday. Here is an extra. Here is if you don't know On Being with Krista Tippett, you want to become friends with this amazing woman. But I referenced Serene Jones, and this is a podcast with Serene Jones talking with Krista Tippett. Mark Lampley asked about the quote that I said yesterday about art. And I used that quote with a quote from Walter Brueggemann about art and artists. And so here it is. And then we're going to close today with the story of Anne. Now, I have not put, and what happens is if you click on this, it opens in a moment to blah, blah, blah. The PDF. So you can see it right there. You can also download it. You can also, if it's a link, you click on it and it will take you to the website where you can listen to the podcast. It's all here and you can come back and have access to it. I have also put the link to the Enna, or Ina. Is it Ina or Enna? I love tulips. They're my favorite flower. You can see 132. I put in the chat the link to the Wakelet so you can have access to it whenever. And I have put the link to that on the last or on one of the slides in the PowerPoint today, so that you'll be able to have access to it. The other thing I'm going to do is give you access to another Wakelet. Educational technologies that I find incredibly useful and easy to use. And you will be able to go in and look at those, and I've put quick tutorials so you can kind of get a little quick YouTube video. Oh, this is what this does, and you can go from there. It's not up yet. Well, it is, but I haven't given you access yet, but I will. And then what you don't see on today is today's PowerPoint, and you don't see on today is the recording for yesterday and today. And as soon as we get those, I will post those. So if you get all excited and you go there today, You won't see everything because as soon as we finish at 2:30, I have to go teach in my day job. So Charlotte campus teaches classes on Saturdays. So I have, and actually they're supposed to be in class right now, but I've given them an hour break. So at 2:30, I'm going to pop off and go to Union and teach virtually there. So give us a, give me a day to get that. No, that's not true. Give me till Monday because I'm not going to open the computer tomorrow if I don't have to. So we'll just, after the certification course and this, we're just going to take a little break. And I'm excited about that. All right. Today, now we have, and I'm going to share my screen and pull up the Wakelet, not the Wakelet, but the PowerPoint here. We have made it to day 3. We have come from a day of lament and captured in Psalm 22. Then yesterday we took a deep breath and sat where we are and celebrated who we are and what we're already doing in day 2 as we sat in those green pastures and recognized that God is with us even in the midst of this. And today we're going to move to Psalm 24 and we're going to look at, oh, here's the Wakelet. We're going to look at and listen to Psalm 24, and Mary Todd is going to read Psalm 24. And as you listen to this familiar psalm, I want you to think about, what do you hear differently now that you've read Psalm 22 and 23? What do you hear differently in Psalm 24 now that you have the context of lament and memory and story? So Mary Todd, if you wouldn't mind reading Psalm 24.
The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it. For he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? Those who have clean hands and pure hearts, who do not lift up their souls to what is false, and do not swear deceitfully. They will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from the God of their salvation. Such is the company of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory.
This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Be to God.
Yes. So given that we've talked about this week, what do you hear in Psalm 24? Light up the chat for me. Glory, affirmation of faith, absolutely. Threshold, of course, Bill. That's a great word, threshold. King of glory. I know I'm hearing in my head the music. Who is the King of glory? Confidence, praise, we belong to God, thanksgiving. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it. Thanks, Nancy. Yes, lots of he's and his is in there. We've come through that time of lament. If we hadn't come through that time of lament, would we have understood even to partial fullness what it meant to hear the words of reassurance? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. And now that we've remembered and we've heard the stories, now it's time to praise God. Now it's time to pick ourselves up, now that we've been refreshed and renewed and we've named our pain and we've caught a glimpse of that memory, our brain reactivated, and we are now going to turn our faces to how do we to use another phrase from the Hebrew scriptures, sing a new song in a foreign land? How do we praise God through the ministries that we can do even in this place? So I want you to watch this video. It talks about something called, well, I'm not going to tell you what it's called because you'll get a sense of it. I want you to watch this video. It is not a church video. And so when you see program, I want you to substitute in your mind ministry. And when you see organization, I want you to substitute church. Okay, got it? Here we go.
I don't see the video.
You do.
I still
All right.
see you.
What's going on? Does that mean no one can see the video?
No, I can see it.
No, I can see it.
I can
Oh,
see
you
it.
can see
I
it.
can see it.
I can see it.
I see it.
Okay.
Maybe change to speaker
Let me
view.
think about what you can do. Try speaker view. Yes. Let's see if you can do that. And then you can see in the chat that the GNTV folks have given you a technical difficulty place to get to. And be assured that I will put this video in the Wakelet. So let's go. So those of you who can see it, you're going to see it again. So
I have it now.
or at least the first one. Okay, good.
Okay.
All right. So remember yesterday I talked about translating that there are places if we do indeed believe that the Lord is the Lord of all creation, then we in the Reformed tradition believe that we can find wisdom in a variety of places. And while there are some things in here that in that video that I go, what it's getting at is really the message that we need to be asking ourselves. Are we ready to do ministry in new ways? Are we ready to open our minds? Are we ready to consider new paradigms? Are we ready to think and be creative as we do ministry in these new and different times? So I'm using a theory that is called volatility. I've put vowels in the wrong. So it should be VUCA, V-U-C-A, not V-A-C-U, VUCA. Volatility, ambiguity, complexity, and uncertainty. Although what we're going to do is put uncertainty up here and put it down there. This is a theory that originally came into being in the military. Yes, there you go, Grace. Yes. This happened, this theory emerged after the Cold War. Before the Cold War, or during the Cold War and before, there was the United States and its philosophy and its way of being in the world. And there was the USSR, there was Russia and its way of being. And there was this competition. There was the race to the moon, and there was the race to arms buildup and all of that. Well, in the early 90s, when all of a sudden the Cold War was over and Russia and USSR began to splinter, and we saw in the 90s the rise, particularly in places like El Salvador and Nicaragua, of kind of guerrilla warfare, of being very quick to get in and disrupt and then get out. All of a sudden, the military had to start thinking in different ways. They had to come up with a new way. And so they came up with this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The other place then was that this as they began to see kind of the volatility of the markets and what's happening with if you keep interest rates the same, that's good for the borrower, but what does that do to inflation? And what does that do to the market? And it's acknowledgement that things are not as simple as A plus B equals C, that we have to be able to consider all of the things that are going to be impacted by this. So let's take a moment to look at this. So volatility is not necessarily about violence, but more about the speed at which things are changing. It's about how much is changing. If you have one small change, it might have some ripples, but if you've got a lot of things that are changing at the same time, then you're going to have a pattern that is completely different. Then that volatility then begins to lead to uncertainty and about kind of where are the patterns that helped us make sense? How are we going to know what we're supposed to do if we can't count on the way things have always been? And of course, uncertainty leads to complexity because we used to think in terms of a meta narrative. We talked a little bit about this the other day, in that there was one way of understanding Christianity. We also now know from our diversity and cultural competency work and anti-racist work is we also thought there was really one way of understanding the world, one experience of the world. And now we know there isn't. And I'm wondering, Nancy, would you be willing to share the story that you emailed to me the other day? Let's see if Nancy's here. Is she on there?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. You're fine.
Had to find the unmute. So I shared with Becky, we were telling the parable of the two sons in the vineyard. And one of our inner city kids, we got into the wondering portion of the questions, and we were talking about the importance of the father and the two sons, and who obeyed, who listened, and who didn't. And one of our boys, Quay, raised his hand and said, it's really important that you listen to your father, because if he tells you to come inside from playing and you don't, you could be shot.
Thank you. A perfect illustration of uncertainty and the reality that we no longer live with a meta-narrative that defines one experience. In any given Sunday school class across white dominant culture, in folks with children who live in suburbs, they would think, oh, it's important to obey your parents because you could get in trouble, you could get grounded, or like take away your screens. It's a completely different experience and worldview. If not coming in when you're told to come in means that you experience a drive-by shooting. So uncertainty, because there are many perspectives and patterns at work. Complexity, that's another piece of where we're talking about, what system works. We are quite used to, and this is part of what has unsettled us. Well, if you just have the right curriculum, then we can fix Sunday school. How many of us have heard that in our places of ministry? Can't we find the right curriculum? We hear it in youth ministry. Well, if we could just get someone that the kids really related to, somebody that was young and somebody that was charismatic, if they play the guitar, that's great. A church that is dwindling in numbers. Oh, can we just get a young minister with a wife, and I'm being very intentional about the use of that metaphor, and children? Well, then that will help us get back to where we used to be. But church is complex because the world is complex, because the families are complex. And we know now that families have always and continue to come in a variety of ways. So the patterns of what we did. Now, understand, you understand this every bit as much as I do, that we were already on the road to this before the pandemic. Some of us were in a stronger state of denial than others, but we were on our road. I mean, the reality is we already lived in an uncertain and a complex and an ambiguous and a volatile world. But the pandemic has put an exclamation point on the end of that. It has said, oh, it has highlighted where we are. So the ambiguity then comes in with, if there are multiple patterns and multiple narratives, then does that mean there are multiple solutions? Are there multiple approaches? Which one is more valid than the other? The person, it is the opinion of the person who holds the purse strings. Do their perspective and their view, their interpretation count more than the person who's coming, looking and begging for some place where they can experience the grace and the love that comes from the church, from Christ and the church when it's at its best? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. It's the world in which we find ourselves. But I want us to think about kind of reframing this. In writing, well, I don't know about you, but I'll say to students, because it was said to me, frame that in a positive manner. Don't stay in Psalm 22. How are we going to reframe this as, yes, this is the landscape in which we live, but how are we going to reframe this in a positive manner that invites us as educators and pastors and leaders in educational ministry? Yes, Phyllis Tickle would be saying these kinds of things. So how do we reframe this? So the original question is, description is it's a volatile time. And so we could just stay there. Yes, this is a time when anxiety is at its height. But what if that V became vision? What instead of we focusing on the volatility, what if we started focusing on the vision? And we who are people of faith, particularly in the Judeo-Christian tradition, know that the vision has already been cast for us. We know what God has in mind for us. We know what is possible. We know what the expectation, God's best intentions for the world and for us and for the church are. Visions. How do we move from volatility to vision? How do we go from uncertainty to understanding? You know, in the science of creativity, the brain science of creativity, you don't just get you get what you get is you have to understand what Howard Gardner would call your domain, your field. And life and education and theory and practices, all the practices that you've been. So what we're going to do here is acknowledge uncertainty, but we're moving into understanding. And what we need to do, you know, vision can't happen without understanding, because the Spirit has to have something to work with when we're talking about those of us who are leading. So we steep ourselves, yes, in that which has given us strength through all the years, Scripture, theology. We don't just toss out Reformed theology because who can read Calvin these days? But rather, how do we find a language in which to speak so that people can understand? So you don't throw it out, but what, you know, if I'm going to France and I'm speaking in German, you know, only a few folks are going to understand. So when I go to France, I've got to speak in French so folks can understand. Doesn't mean that changes my message, but we have to become multilingual in how we communicate. So you don't throw out Scripture, you don't throw out Reformed theology, but we have got to figure out how to speak it in a way that meets people where they are, and that is compelling and dynamic and relative. If we cannot communicate in a way that is relative, we're losing them. All right, so then complexity. All right, fine. We have acknowledged that we live in a complex world that our forebears could maybe not really have imagined. Some of us on this screen, including the person who's speaking, remembers a and emails and Wi-Fi and much less all this. It's a complex world. So now, how are we going to make sense of? How are we going to gain clarity? If we've got vision and we've got understanding, how do we create clarity? Thanks, Barry Todd. Don't know what to do about it. So the clarity is, how do we make sense of it? How do we have a sense of, okay, we know here's the vision, here's the message, here's what we understand. We know we need to speak it in a language that is accessible to all. How are we going to do that? Well, I want to go back and pick up something that we talked about yesterday in that trauma-informed pedagogy, and that's that you don't do it alone. You have to have a community. So you really need to cultivate a group of folks that you will consistently get with, to toss these ideas around, to push, to shove, to wrestle, to affirm, to tinker with. so that clarity emerges from the community and you're not trying to do it alone. And then, of course, ambiguity. Well, let's see, where are we? Here we go. Ambiguity. The muddiness then comes to agility. This is how we, how do you measure understanding? The measure of understanding is, can you use it? Can you use it in a way that helps folks, that enriches or nurture, and those of us who are in educational ministry, in Christian education, we have to be able, in some ways, to be nimble, to be able to take what vision we have and the understanding and the clarity which we've come to, and then use it. Let's also remember that those who innovate also fail. And failure when an idea doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you have failed or that you are a failure. Now, that's a message we need to get across to heads of staff and our people who serve on committees and in congregations, because we live in a culture that wants to have very little tolerance for failure. And there's a difference between failing because you didn't do anything, you didn't prepare, and needing to tinker with in the midst of innovation. So that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to stop this right now and say, what I want us to do now is, let's see, any comments or questions, you can pop those in the chat. What I want us to do is think about strategies. So we've talked about theory and we've talked about broad stroked kinds of things in educational ministry. Yesterday, we talked about particular things we could do. We're going to use a case study. And it's a case study that is very familiar. And my hunch is, and it hits close to home for many of you. And isn't that what we should be teaching? Yes, as a matter of fact. Sorry, the dog is like nudging me. So what I want us to do is we're going to get into small groups and we're going to use a case study. And before we go to the case study, I want to remind us something. Cindy, look in about 1:32, the time frame of 1:32 chat, and you will see the link to the Wakelet address. So Sunday school. For some of you, I suspect Sunday school is working. When I was one of the pastors at Myers Park, we had 300 children coming to Sunday school, 3 years old through 5th grade. Sunday school is working when you have that many children. Now, that was about a third of the children that we had, but that was nice. It took 90 Sunday school teachers. It was kind of crazy, but it was working. It didn't stop people from saying, oh, we need to have a new curriculum, because I remember when we used to have blah, 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 blah. So some of you, Sunday school is working. For some of you, Sunday school has been dead for a long time. That horse that you were riding was, yes, I will do that. That horse that you were that you were riding of Sunday school is dead. It's time to get off. But here's the problem. Too many of us have forgotten that little phrase in Christian education called form follows function. The prime directive, and those of you who are Trekkies know what I'm talking about, the form follows function. Thank you, Mary Todd. You first must figure out the purpose. What is the purpose of Sunday school? It's to nurture faith. It's to learn the stories of Scripture. It's to wrestle with our lives. And for 100+ years, the function, the form that the function of Sunday school, of faith formation took was Sunday school. The problem is too many churches have collapsed Sunday school with Christian education. Hence why we have constantly looking for new words to call it. When in fact, in reality, Christian education always understood itself to be, congregationally integrated education. Those things, depending on where I am and what I'm doing. But the issue is form follows function. So Sunday school is a form of learning the scriptures, learning theology, wrestling with the ideas. If your form of Sunday school isn't working, to quote a phrase from a popular movie, let it go. And I will not sing it for you because you would run for the hills. So you're going to figure out vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. Your case study is, how are you going to use that model to address the issue of Sunday school? Now, pretend it's not working at your church. For some of you, you're really like, yeah, that's not pretend, that's reality. Pretend that it's not working. All right, the way that I want to close our time together, first I want to say thank you for being so incredible and so willing to explore new ideas, for your willingness to name kind of where we are and to look where we could be. And I can't reinforce enough that you don't do this by yourself. We won't get through this experience on our own. So find a group, and now technology makes it easier. Still have crazy calendars. Find a sustaining group who can think through with you, that you can bounce ideas off. But I'm going to end with a children that I think really sums up what it's going to mean to be in this time, in this pandemic, and what educational ministry is going to need afterwards. So let's do this. All right, come on. There we go. Oh, no, go back. All right. There once was a girl who loved to count. She counted the cracks in the sidewalk, the clouds in the skies, the stars at night. Most of all, she loved to count the word "and" in every story she read. What a waste of time, said her neighbor. Be serious, said her principal. Stop dilly-dallying, said her parents. She couldn't convince anyone that counting "and" wasn't silly until the day she started reading an old story and everyone listened. Down the dusty road, a circle rolled along, feeling all alone with all of its edges gone, and the circle bumped into a single line. Could this somehow be a secret sign? But line thought circle was a wreck. You don't even have a neck. But over the hill came a small word, "and." So simple and sure, saying, yes, we can. She joined their hands. Together you'll bloom into a glowing red balloon. When you gather more than 3, what a party it will be. Triangle sat alone on the ground, making all her very angled sounds. A rectangle scooched up with a grumbling noise. You're a silly, almost trapezoid. She was hurt by what he said, and she scratched her pointy head. But over the hill came the small word "and," so simple and sure, saying, yes, we can. She joined their hands. There is no flaw. Together we can be a seesaw. One side goes up, one side goes down, and many seesaws make a playground. Once there was a solitary square, thumping along as quickly as it dared. Triangle slid up, all full of pride, say, "Hey, have you a useless side?" Square was stung by what she said, and he almost turned and fled. But over the hill came the small word "and," so simple and sure, saying, "Yes, we can." Join their hands, have no doubt. The two of you can build a house, and then many houses could together be a neighborhood. Line went marching down the street, so very proper and so very neat. And when he saw Oval in the flower bed, he laughed and said, "You're such an egghead." Oval acted mad, but inside she was simply sad. Then over the hill came a small word "and," so simple and sure, saying, "Yes, we can." She joined their hands. See what I wrote? Together you can make a note. And when many notes relate, what a lovely song it will make. Octagon sat upon a mat and tipped his little 8-sided hat. A cylinder rolled up one side. You couldn't rock and roll if you tried. Octagon got upset. The words made him start to fret. But over the hill came the small word "and." Yes, we can. So she joined their hands. You are able, and the two of you can be a table. And when people gather around, a new community is found. To create a world without a missing piece, all the different shapes make us complete. I am, I, and you are, you. This is really nothing new, but remember, it's a fact. We are stronger back to back to back. And when we meet someone different from us, and we are tempted to make a fuss, look at our friend, the small word "and," so simple and sure and saying, "Yes, we can." She joins our hands and shows us how to trust. Then you and I can become us. What wonders there can be when you and I are we, family. This from one of the greatest storytellers of all time, Sandy Sasso. Keep the "and" in mind if we are going to do educational ministry in this volatile and uncertain time. We need that little word "and." Yes, things have changed and the church is likely to never go back to the way it was. But how might we bring that little word "and" in all that we do? So go in peace. Thank you for a slice of your time. Remember, my email is upsem.edu, and I will, if you didn't get the link to the Wakelet, and we'll make sure you have it. All right, friends, I'll see you later.